Welcome to the Brand and Market Podcast, where branding clarity meets marketing strategy. I'm your host, Ali Haney, founder of Brand and Market, a boutique agency dedicated to helping small businesses craft intentional brands and effective marketing plans. Each week, I share practical tips and insights to help you, especially those of you in real estate-related industries, build a standout brand to attract your brand's biggest fans. Let's dive in. Welcome to the 25th episode of this podcast. It is, although the 25th episode ever, it is the first episode of under the new name, the Brand and Market Podcast. This podcast was formerly known as the Ali Rae Haney Show, and it has since been rebranded after about a 5-month hiatus, in which time there were a lot of things going on behind the scenes, both with my business and in my personal life. But it is a fresh new year in 2025, and I am ushering in kind of a new chapter in both my business and my personal life. As far as the business side of things goes, my business has been totally rebranded from the top to the bottom, from the front to the back. I have new visual branding, new logo, a new business name, new service offerings within my business. Like, it is just looking like a totally different business than it did just 12 months ago. And on the personal side of things, we have just recently moved and are hopefully settled for quite some time. We've been in our house for about a month now, and so I'm starting the new year with a new business and a new home, and I could not be more excited about that. I want to kind of introduce what the Brand and Market Podcast is going to be and how it might look similar but a little bit different than the Ali Rae Haney Show, which is what it was formerly called. The content itself is going to be largely the same. We're still focusing on brand building mostly. And then on top of that, I'm also going to be incorporating some deep dives into other marketing strategies as well. The main difference, however, is going to be that I will be hosting guests now, which I am super excited for. Previously, the only guest that I've had on was Cassie, who is my best friend and also a co-founder of mine from another business that I run. After a little bit of soul searching during this rebrand, I realized I was really just allowing the tech aspect to scare me away from having guests. I was a little bit intimidated by adding that recording aspect to my plate, but we're going to go head first into guest recordings, and you guys are going to see me figure it out in real time. As I will share in a second, one of Brand and Market's core values is knowledge. And despite my extreme level of nerdiness, I do pride myself on being the research nerd. I'm not an expert on everything. Surprise! So if I have the opportunity to share someone else's knowledge with you all, and especially in the form of guest interviews, then I'm absolutely going to take advantage of that opportunity. I'm excited to share all of that with you all in the coming weeks, months, years. So yeah, with that being said, this episode is going to be a sort of behind the scenes peek at the Brand and Market rebrand. Everything that I've learned, all of the insights that I've found, because I've noticed that a lot of my clients do come to me when they are in a season of transition. So because I have recently gone through it, I wanted to share some of that experience with you all. So let's first start at the beginning. My business has seen a lot of different iterations. I'm pretty sure I did another episode on that as well. But I started out my business as a photography business. I niched down into weddings. When COVID hit, I transitioned from weddings because, of course, we couldn't really gather in big groups, to branding photography. And that was a lot of fun. And I realized that I loved working with other small business owners. And from there is when I started to branch into more of like the branding, brand development, marketing side of things. Once I got to that point, I felt like there were a lot of things that were still kind of lingering from my wedding photography days. And I did kind of a complete 180 and did a rebrand back in, I guess it was 2022. And that was essentially kind of like shedding the wedding photography side of things and really focusing on specifically branding and brand development. I did that rebrand totally on my own. I never hired a designer to do any type of brand strategy with me or logo design, anything like that. that was sort of like on me. It was all internal. Since then, as I've continued to grow in my service offerings, not only on the brand development side of things, but now introducing other marketing strategy as well as like marketing execution, writing newsletters for people, social media management, stuff like that. There was just something that was missing. It still felt like I was really honing in on this. There are a lot of educators in the wedding world that teach that having a personal brand is the only way to run your business if you want to stand out. And arguably in the wedding world, that might be true. Just take, for example, me as a photographer. There are a lot of people that have my same skills. They can use a camera and work a camera just as well as me. They might have the same editing style or posing style as me. But the thing that differentiates you in the wedding world is your client experience, is your personality. And it's just a really personal industry. You're there with people on one of the biggest days of their lives. And so that personal brand is, in that world, oftentimes what differentiates you. I had that same mentality as I was moving from a B2C type of business to a B2B type of business. So when I carried the personal brand of Ali Rae Haney, because my business was named Ali Rae Haney Photography, I pretty much just dropped the photography and ran my business under Ali Rae Haney. That personal brand, it began to feel a little bit constricting. And I hate to say this because I'm not a fake person, but it felt almost fake. Like I was putting on this personality to like show my face on social media or to show up in any like type of personal brand capacity. And that's when I knew that like it was just time for a shift. That feeling paired with an experience that I had at the Escape conference last spring. For those of you who are first-time listeners, the brand that I co-founded with my best friend Cassie is Escape Events, and that hosts events for creative entrepreneurs who are in their growth phase. So we hosted our first event last April of 2024, and I realized at that event that naming a business after myself makes it pretty hard to sell that business because no one else is me. Ultimately, I don't see that selling is not my ultimate goal, but I certainly want to be able to have that type of exit as an option in the future. So when it was time to rebrand, I completely dropped my own name as my business name and came up with a fresh new one, which is Brand and Market. Makes it very clear as to what I'm doing, and it just felt time, like it was the right time to move away from my name being my business name. Okay, so another part of this rebrand is that I was kind of, I don't want to say stuck. I was finding myself identifying my ideal client as other creative entrepreneurs because I came from the wedding world. It's a very creative world. We have lots of photographers, videographers, florists, bakers, DJs. And that is kind of where I was comfortable. That's what I knew. And so I continued to say, whenever I was asked who my ideal client was, who I like to work with, I say creative entrepreneurs. And that is true. However, I was just kind of ignoring what was right in front of me. I kept getting inquiries from construction companies. Like I designed a website for a paving company, for a carpentry company, a construction company. And then I was approached by a realtor to help her with her marketing. And I was approached by someone who has a business that does real estate mortgages and insurance. At one point, I looked at the proposals that I had out, and 7 out of 8 of them were all somehow tied to the real estate world. I just finally took the kind of nudge, like that was my wake-up call, essentially. And this realization paired with my experience in the short-term rental world, it was right there in front of me all along. I'm not sure how it took me so long to realize it, but it did. But my knowledge of branding and marketing as a small business owner in a creative industry, paired with my short-term rental and real estate knowledge makes the new direction of brand and market just really perfect for me and perfect for my clients because I've been in their shoes. For those that don't know, I have owned/managed 3 short-term rentals in 3 different states, North Carolina, Virginia, and Kentucky. And I also got my real estate license while we were living in Kentucky a couple years ago. So I know the world well. I know it intimately, and it made sense. So that's one of the reasons that I went through with the rebrand of brand and market as well. Okay, so I'm going to break it down a little bit into how I went about starting the process of the rebrand itself. I had never really sat down and wrote a mission or values or really an in-depth ideal client avatar, which is very ironic considering the field of work that I'm in. I had been kind of toiling around designing different logos for, oh goodness, it had to have been 4 or 5 months. I was playing around with this rebrand. I'm trying to think because there was a road trip that I was in the car riding shotgun and just playing around in Canva to see if I could spark some design creativity within myself. And I had sent a couple of different logos to Cassie just to see, get some feedback on them. And she's like, this just doesn't feel right. This just doesn't feel right. And I agreed with her. I was just trying to put my thumb on it as to what didn't feel right. And I couldn't do it. So anyway, I do what I do, which is I call it let it marinate. And I just kind of took my brain and my eyes and my hands off of the keyboard and let it kind of sit in the back of my head until something creative struck me. And that happened for months. I returned back to try to design something 4, 5, 6 times. At one point, I was going deep into this academic vibe with argyle and diamonds. And I was like, oh, this is it. And then I would show it to someone and they'd be like, what? No. And I'm like, I know, but I thought it was. I wanted it to be so badly. And so finally, I hired a brand designer, and the founder of that brand design company, her name is Victoria Marcoulier. The brand design agency is Brandwell Designs. If you should look her up. She is incredible with operations after going through her client process and her client experience. I just admire her so much. And I didn't work with her throughout the brand design process. I spoke with her during the inquiry process. However, her brand designer was equally as great. Her name was Aviana. Let me back up and go kind of through what that process looked like. She had a course that she asked me to take as her client called the Branding Business School. I went through that course during the client experience prior to solidifying the elements of my visual brand. So when I say visual brand, I mean my logo, submark, any patterns. So all the stuff that you see in a brand that's more tangible. So I went through that course and I knew that I had all the pieces of the puzzle, but I just wasn't putting them together. That's what all of those late nights in Canva resulted in. But through actually sitting down and examining each of the pieces of the puzzle, I was able to have some of the breakthroughs that I needed to have in order to create a clear brand in terms of those softer things, the mission and the values, to be able to then basically word vomit all of that to Aviana for her to take all those words and ideas and formulate a visual from that. One of those things that I really solidified throughout the Branding Business School was the mission for Brand and Market. So without further ado, I'm going to tell you what my mission is for Brand and Market. This feels surreal that it took me so long to come to this, and I'm finally saying it and putting it into the wild. So the mission of Brand and Market distills branding and marketing strategy into potent and personalized plans to execute and ultimately grow revenue for growth-minded businesses in real estate adjacent industries. So I'm putting it out there. I do branding and marketing strategy for those that are looking to grow in real estate adjacent industries. It's exciting. With that, One of the only things that I retained from the Ali Rae Haney brand were my values. And this is so funny to me that my perception of a personal brand has changed so much from me being in the wedding industry, because when I say personal brand, I think that the person is the face of the brand. It's less of a corporate brand. And I think what I'm on the path to doing is bringing personal and corporate together. So what I mean by that is my name is not attached to my business anymore. It's Brand and Market, that Brand and Market LLC. Just registered it with the North Carolina Secretary of State today. The thing that makes it personal is that these are my personal core values. I kept them from when my business was Ali Rae Haney, and they are very important to me. So the first is clarity. Not only do I want to have a very clear process for my clients to funnel through, I want them to feel very, very certain in what the next step is going to be while working with me. I never want them to feel like they are guessing as to what is going to come next. The flip side of that word is that I want them to feel very clear in their brand and their marketing strategy. Like I want them to feel confident that the messaging they are putting out into the world is going to attract their ideal client. I don't want there to be any questions about that. So clarity is value number one of Brand and Market. The second value is intention. I want there to be a very specific, dare I say, calculated reason as to why we are incorporating certain strategies within their marketing strategy or certain parts of their branding strategy. I don't want it ever to be like throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying to figure out what's going to work. There should be a clear intent behind every strategy that is executed by Brand and Market. And finally, I actually parsed it down to 3 values only. So first is clarity, second is intention, and third is knowledge. I am a nerd at heart. You've already heard me say that in this episode, and I'm pretty sure if ever you had a conversation with me in real life, I will probably refer to some business book that I have read. That's just who I am. I love research. I love learning. I am a self-proclaimed lifelong learner. And so knowledge is the third core value of Brand and Market. I want there to be research backing, data backing why we are going after a specific why we are pursuing a specific strategy. I want to be the one researching what is coming next as a marketing trend. I want to take that responsibility of doing all of that research off of your plate so you can get back to running your business. And I'm the one that's researching consumer trends. So those are my 3 values: clarity, intention, and knowledge. Don't know where to start with email marketing? Not tech savvy, but still want pretty emails for your subscribers? Then Flodesk is your answer. One of my favorite parts about Flodesk is that it's really beautiful for both the business owner and the client. The client sees well-designed, eye-catching emails that actually makes them look forward to you popping into their inbox. But also on the back end, it's really easy to create funnels and segment customers. This was what I was most intimidated about when first starting an email list, and Flodesk took care of all of that. If you'd like 50% off your first year subscription to Flodesk, simply go to aliraehaney.com/Flodesk to sign up and get your email list started today. Finally, the last main thing that changed was my audience. I've already kind of touched on this, that I transitioned from talking to creative entrepreneurs to real estate related industries. So that could be short-term rental owners, realtors, construction companies. Like I said, I've worked with paving companies and carpentry companies, pretty much anyone that is touching the real estate world. I would like to work with them. And that is a huge, huge, huge transition that has led me into creating a lot of different things in my business, presenting service offerings different ways, creating smaller opt-ins, low ticket offers. Like one of the things that's on the horizon for Q1 2025 is creating Instagram templates for social media for realtors. So like that's, for example, will be a low ticket offer that then will be able to funnel into a one-on-one service that could be branding strategy, marketing strategy, etc. So now that I had like gotten clear on my mission, my values, my target audience, and I was working with Brandwell Designs to get my visual branding done, I had all of those things. So now it was time to like really execute them and push them across all the platforms, update everything online. And if you all recall, one of my, as I was transitioning from like just photography over to brand development services, one of the services that I offered was a brand analysis. And essentially what I did was kind of comb through all of their online presence and see where the inconsistencies were so that I was looking at their business through the eyes of a potential client and making sure everything was consistent and cohesive across all online platforms. In the background, like I said, this last 5 months has been kind of intense behind the scenes because not only am I doing this full rebrand from Ali Rae Haney over to Brand and Market, over on the ESC side of things, we are also going through like a soft rebrand. And I was very grateful that Cassie took the lead on that. And she created this like comprehensive list of all of the places that we needed to update things on ESC's online platform. So Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, social media, like all the social media, Facebook, website, of course, email marketing platform, Canva, like all of the things that we use in an everyday basis. And I basically took that list and made a copy of it and adjusted it to all the platforms that I'm on and that I use for brand and market. Quite honestly, it's a little overwhelming because even when you have that list, like you get down to it and you can quickly check certain things off. Like, for example, I need to update my Instagram profile picture and my Instagram bio and my Instagram opt-ins. Like so many like very small, minute things need to be changed in order for the potential client experience to be smooth. Down to, let me give you an example. On Flodesk launched this new feature, I believe it was in 2024, where you can personalize your URL for opt-ins for your email marketing. So I run a monthly, soon to be weekly newsletter through Flodesk. I also have opt-ins for my freebies, which is a brand audit checklist. I will link that in the show notes so that you guys can get on that list with the new URL. So for example, it was like aliray.flodesk.com or something like that. And I changed it to brandandmarket.flodesk.com. So that was like a very small tweak, but now all of my links that I've ever posted with the aliray.flodesk.com URL are broken. So I'm going back through like even into my Instagram links in my bio to change that. Like it's just like small, minute things that are very easy to overlook in the grand scheme of things. So the nuts and bolts of it has actually been like pretty nitpicky. It's something that when I am finally done, I'm going to have to go back through with like a fine-tooth comb and essentially perform a brand analysis on myself to make sure that everything has been transitioned over. Aside from like those small, like nitpicky social media things, the two biggest lifts have been my website and the podcast. In terms of website, I've slowly started to tweak the design and the copy over there on the back end, but I haven't published any changes yet. I contemplated hiring a designer, like a show it designer, to, again, like it's something that I can do on my own. It's something that I do for others. But when you're doing it for yourself, it's so much easier to like have that analysis paralysis of like, is this exactly right? Is this speaking directly to my ideal client? So I've not decided to officially hire anyone on that yet. I'm tweaking it on the back end myself. And my goal is to have it launched by the end of Q1. But that one, the website, just because it is a behemoth, I have so many pages over there. I'm taking it slow on that one. It physically pains me to appear unprofessional online, but I am telling myself that it will pay off in the long run because it will maybe not be perfect, but it will be damn near close to perfect. With that, I also had to change my domain name, which has not been changed in years, like since 2019. I've been aliraehaney.com online since almost as long as I can remember. So that was one thing that I had to change. That was a whole process to get everything to forward from aliraehaney.com to brandonmarket.co. I even tried to find the person that owned brandonmarket.com and was unsuccessful in getting in touch with her. So brandonmarket.co it is until I can get my hands on that .com. But it's even down to like the nuts and bolts of I purchased my domain name through Squarespace, but use Showit to host my site. So there are Squarespace like drawbacks that will not necessarily allow you to permanently maintain old paths. So you can permanently redirect to the new domain. Sorry if I'm getting a little bit too technical here, but you can permanently redirect to the new domain name. But all of those previous blogs, it's hard. Like Squarespace, for some reason, won't necessarily let you maintain the path from the old URL to the new URL with like old established blog posts, if that makes sense. All of that to say, a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Website was the number one big lift. The number two big lift was the podcast. And it was almost like restarting the whole podcast from scratch because I had to redo all of those like startup things, the podcast cover art, the podcast description, the actual intro that you just heard and the outro that you're about to hear. All of those things had to be redone. I ended up choosing new music with the help of my new podcast producer, Haley Gaffin of Gaffin Creative. So she helped me through kind of that process again. Even though I had been through it, it was almost exactly a year ago now. And it's one of those things like you don't practice it every day. It's like a one-time thing and you're done with it. So it wasn't something that I picked up again super easily. However, we got through it. The whole podcast has been rebranded. The podcast cover art is updated and it's coming along. So welcome. Now I would love to kind of go through like overarching lessons from the rebrand in case perhaps you are thinking about going through one soon. First, let's talk about some of the challenges that I had. I know I've kind of touched on some of them already, but we're going to go through them item by item. First was choosing a brand designer. It took me so long to get to the conclusion that I, A, even needed to hire one, but B, once I started to go through the process of hiring one, I found myself getting stuck back into the wedding photography brand designer world, and I was looking for something totally different. So I actually had, I think it was 4 or 5 like inquiry phone calls with brand designers. Ultimately went with Brandwell Designs because they had such a wide variety of clients that they worked with, but also their client experience and the confidence that the agency founder had on the sales call. It was just like, okay, this is where I'm meant to be. And she even had all of her portfolios on her website broken down into the different industries with which she had worked. So yes, she did work with some of those creative entrepreneurs. However, she had also worked with interior designers, with short-term rental property management companies, with realtors. So I felt like she had enough experience in the world that I was in without being oversaturated in the world that I was in, if that makes sense. The second challenge that I had was defining my mission, my values, and my ideal client. I mentioned this already, like I was just, as I was going through the branding process, I was really holding on to that creative industry, like clientele. Like I thought when I went through the majority of that brand design process, I was still holding on to the fact that I thought that female creative entrepreneurs were still going to be part of my ideal client base. I was like breaking the cardinal rule of speaking to one ideal client and talking to, like, out of one side of my mouth, I was talking to female creative entrepreneurs. Out of the other side of my mouth, I was talking to dudes in construction companies. So I really had to break up with that idea of I can basically ride 2 horses with one ass. I had to choose which way I was going. And when I did, I finally felt this like weight lift off of my shoulders. Okay, some of the wins that I had. I was like, I have to come up with something really like positive, but I have to dig deep in order to get this positive, because I'm not sure anything really went smoothly. I told you about all the times that I went through like late night Canva rabbit holes, Pinterest vision boards. Like it took me months to come to the conclusion that I even need to hire a brand designer, much less finding the brand designer and then going through the brand design process. Like I've been toying around with this idea probably since the beginning of 2024 when I launched the podcast the first time. And all of this to say, like, it's a long process. So if you're going through a rebrand, especially if you're going through a rebrand of your entire business and business model, and it's not like a slight tweak in just like target audience or ideal client, give yourself grace and let yourself take time to marinate. Let yourself figure out who you want to talk to and who you want to be as a business owner. Like it's okay to take that time, even though it feels like it is taking way too long. The only thing I think I would have done differently if I were going to do it again would be to have kept better records of my own experience so that I can help my own future clients go through a rebrand similar to mine. It was a little bit of a missed opportunity for like a self case study so that I could help my own clients go through the same process. And like I said, it can be overwhelming, especially if it's a major rebrand. But I think my memory serves me well enough that I could go back and make kind of like a progress list or an opt-in, put that on the Q2 2025 to-do list of new freebie, how to do a major rebrand, all the things that need to go into it in order to make it successful. Okay, my final thing that I really want to kind of harp on here is to prioritize your ideal client or your target audience when you are doing a rebrand. There are so many times that I see business owners choose what they like to see in a brand. Like they choose their favorite colors as their brand's color palette. They choose a logo that they would be attracted to, when often we are not our own ideal clients. Maybe we have some of the same characteristics, maybe, but oftentimes we are not the person who we are trying to attract. And you always need to keep that person that you are trying to attract in the forefront of your mind when you are choosing all of the different aspects of your new brand. Let me get off my ideal client soapbox and conclude this episode. So 3 major takeaways from this rebranding behind the scenes episode. First, don't let yourself be your biggest obstacle. If there's something in your gut telling you that there is something not right within your brand or your marketing strategy, listen to your gut, because I had all of the pieces there in front of me and I just refused to A, look at them, and then B, once I looked at them, put them together. So do not let yourself be your own biggest obstacle when it comes to rebranding your business. The second major takeaway: identify your ideal client as part of your brand strategy and use that ideal client as the basis of every visual or technical branding thing that you come up with, your color palette, your logo design, down to your messaging and your website. Like everything should have that ideal client in mind when you are designing it. Last but not least, put yourself in the shoes of that ideal client that you just defined and go and take a look at your website, at your online presence, at your social media. You can use the brand audit checklist that I am linking in the show notes. That is one of those freebies that I talked about. So it's totally free. You can go download it, and that will help you make sure that you are consistent across all online platforms. And quite frankly, I encourage you to do that whether or not you're going through a rebrand, because a lot of times there are small little tweaks that we do as solopreneurs that we don't realize that we do, and we don't update all of those online platforms. So go ahead and grab that checklist in the show notes and make sure that you are consistent and cohesive across all online platforms. Thank you so very much for tuning in to the 25th episode of the podcast, but the first episode of the Brand and Market podcast, which I am so excited about. And here's my new sign-off line. Here's to clarity, intention, and knowledge in your brand and in your market. Signing off till next week, this is Ali Haney, your host of the Brand and Market Podcast. You just completed another episode of the Brand and Market Podcast. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so that you never miss an episode. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.